In this video, I'd like to talk about adding and subtracting complex numbers. So remember that a complex number has both a real part, where it's just a normal number, and an imaginary part, where it has I in it. Remember that I is just the square root of -1. And when adding these numbers, essentially we're just going to add the real parts together, the parts without I, and we're going to add the imaginary parts together. So in some sense, it's just an exercise in combining like terms. So for this example problem, we have -13 plus 16i, and then we're going to subtract 3 plus 4i. So we're going to combine the real parts together, and then we're going to combine the imaginary parts together. Now, the first thing we should do before we start combining things is to distribute this negative. So when you're adding, you don't have to worry too much, but we are subtracting this entire number here. So we are subtracting the real part, and we are subtracting this plus 4i. So let's distribute that negative. So I'm just going to rewrite the first complex number without the parentheses. And then we're subtracting 3. So we're distributing this negative now. And we're also going to be subtracting 4i. So we have -3 minus 4i. Now, like I mentioned, we are just going to combine those real parts together. And then we'll combine the imaginary parts together. So we get -13 minus 3. So we'll write that first, since we usually write the real part of a complex number first. And then we have plus 16i, and we're going to subtract 4i from that. So when we evaluate this, -13 minus 3, that's just -16. And plus 16i minus 4i, well, we have 16 of these i's, and we're taking away 4. So we would have 12 i's left. And this here, -16 plus 12i, this would be our final answer. So we could do this a bit more generally, but the main idea of this is fairly straightforward. But let's do it generally as well. So if we had two complex numbers, a plus bi, and that's one of them. So let's say we're going to add to c plus di. The basic idea is that we're going to combine the real parts. So you get a plus c, and actually let me just get rid of the parentheses here. You get a plus c for the real parts, and with the imaginary parts, we're going to add bi and di. So it simplifies. The part right here, this green part, that is just our real part of the complex number. And this pink part here, this is just our imaginary part. So you do get a different complex number as your answer here. And in a later video, we'll look at geometrically what is happening here on the complex plane, since that will give you another interpretation of how to add and subtract these complex numbers.